The small rudder failed, and the whole ship suffered. I think this is what James wants us to see. He's saying that your tongue is like that. The little tongue can control your whole life. It can shape everything about you. It shapes your direction. It's the most powerful part of your body. It shapes everything about you. I think this is what James wants us to see. And so he begins to share these illustrations, these object lessons, as he's helping us understand that. He talks about bits in a horse's mouth. Now, my Waller friends already know this, but for those of us who don't, a bit in a horse's mouth is a small piece of metal that you put in a horse's mouth, and then you tie reins to that. And with that small piece of metal, you can lead a really powerful animal. You can lead it where you want it to go. This is what James wants us to see. He's saying small bit, large animal. Big horse is controlled by something very small. And then he goes on in verse 4, and he says, look at the ships too. Though they are so large and driven by strong winds, they are nevertheless directed by a very small rudder wherever the inclination of the pilot determines. In other words, a small rudder leads and directs a massive ship, even in this massive body of water. I read a story this week about a German battleship in World War II in 1941. It was considered the world's greatest battleship. It was unsinkable. It could take on a barrage of torpedoes and all kinds of firepower, which I think anytime you tag a ship as unsinkable, it's going to sink. And so the Germans were proud of this, and the British were fighting the Germans. And on May 21st, 1941, in the North Atlantic, there were some planes flying over, some British planes, and they saw the German ship. It was known as the Bismarck. And so they saw it, and they decided to drop 2 torpedoes down to go towards the ship, and then nothing happened. There was no evidence of any explosion. All of a sudden, it continued to go until all of a sudden it completely changed course, completely turned around, and began going back towards the British ships. The problem was it wasn't going in a straight line. It was zigzagging. It was going in circles. It had lost control. What they later found out is that the rudder, the small rudder of the unsinkable ship, had actually been jammed by one of the torpedoes. And all of a sudden, it couldn't lead itself anymore. It couldn't go where the captains wanted it to go. A jammed rudder ended up leading to the sinking of the Bismarck. The British ships arrived. They took out the ship. It sunk and sat at the bottom of the North Atlantic. The small rudder failed, and the whole ship suffered. I think this is what James wants us to see. He's saying that your tongue is like that. The little tongue can control your whole life. It can shape everything about you. It shapes your direction. It's the most powerful part of your body. It shapes everything about you. Think about the job that you have. How did you get that job? And you say, well, I got an education, I got a degree, I knew someone. But there's a lot of people who have degrees. There's a lot of people who know someone but don't have jobs. How did you get that job? Well, you probably sat in an interview or some kind of conversation, maybe even completed a resume with carefully thought out words, and that's why you got that job. And as you've continued in that job, you've had to use your words. You've had to use your mouth to continue to lead you in that specific role. Words are powerful. They influence everything about us. Did you know that you are one sentence away from being fired from that job? Have you ever thought about that? Your words are significant. They shape so much about us. So much is determined by what we choose to say or not say. James continues on in verse 5. He says, so also the tongue is a small part of the body, and yet it boasts of great things. See how great a forest is set aflame by such a small fire. We're in that time of year right now, and it's going to happen this week. So you can pray for my wife and I, because we're in that time of the year where the temperature begins to change. And there's a great debate in our house. Can we turn the fireplace on or not? Anybody with me? Anybody else in this struggle? It's 75 degrees outside, and she wants to turn on the fireplace. And I'm like, the air conditioner's still on. Like, that's competing with each other. But we like fire. There's something about it. It's calming. It's peaceful until it's not. Like, we love sitting around a campfire, sitting with the guys or sitting with friends and just getting kind of lost in conversation and remembering the past and telling stories while we stare at this fire. We all love a good fire, but only when it's controlled. Earlier this year in January, there was a significant fire in California, in Los Angeles County, known as the Palisades Fire. And I was reading about that this week as I was considering this passage. I was thinking about this. Did you know some quick facts about the Palisades Fire? It burned for 24 days. Some would say it burned for 30 days because it actually started on January 1st and then was put out, but there were embers smoldering underground that ended up leading to the massive fire known as the Palisades Fire. But it's the 10th deadliest fire in the history of the United States. It's the third most destructive on record, the worst ever in LA County. It burned every structure, with the exception of a small few, north of Sunset Boulevard, which is a place where structures are incredibly expensive. Said that residents were urged to use extreme caution with anything that might spark a fire. Just a small spark back in January could lead to a destructive fire, which is ultimately what happened. Crews from Mexico and Canada. So here I am shaming myself because Canada helped us put the fire out. I read this week that there were 5,677 personnel, 551 fire engines, 42 tenders, I don't even know what that is, 43 helicopters, and 48 bulldozers all used to put out this incredibly destructive fire. And at the end of all of that, they have estimated that the total destruction of the Palisades Fire equals $63 billion with a B. An incredibly destructive fire that did all of this destruction, and it started with a small ember caught in the wind. This is what James wants us to see when we consider our words, that there's a powerful force behind our tongue, behind our words, that can be incredibly powerful, but also incredibly costly and destructive. I think the first thing he wants us to see is that our words are powerful. Your words are powerful. They can be powerful for good, and they can be powerful for bad. They can be used to bring life, and they can be used to bring death. I think oftentimes we fail to recognize how powerful our words are. They're much more powerful than we actually realize. But as with anything in life, when we understand the power of something, then we also recognize the responsibility that comes with power. With great power comes great responsibility. James is pointing us to this.